Super Mario 64 DS, a game I spent hours and hours of my younger years playing through over and over again, trying in vain to unlock Waluigi. Speaking of, I was always curious about this black box on Peach's castle, which sparked many theories about a palpable fiend here. It wasn't until I was reading over the cutting room floor where I found out this was actually a leftover from a beta build or demo of the game. Yeah, this is just a video about the beta of Super Mario 64 DS with some regional differences sprinkled in for flavor. Super Mario 64 DS was first shown off during Nintendo's conference at E3 2004.
My name is Reggie. I'm about kicking ass. I'm about taking names. And we're about
This
making
along
games.
with Mario Kart DS, Twilight Princess, and the Nintendo DS itself. Then the game was known as Super Mario 64 x 4 and a demo was available to play. It was more or less just a 4-player versus mode in the final game, and the stars, the game's main collectible, looked a little different, more rigid and gold. Strangely, there also appeared to be a floating island above the castle grounds in this demo, as shown here. There was also a clip of Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Yoshi flying around very different castle grounds. I'm unsure if the entire game was planned to be strictly a multiplayer experience, and I highly doubt it was. Many images of the gang traversing Bob-omb Battlefield and the aforementioned castle grounds were also shown. Curiously, a pair of images showing the gang fighting Bowser in a confined rectangular room was also shown. I doubt this was anything more than proof of concept because the positions seem awkward and there doesn't really seem to be a way to defeat the Koopa King. This minimap shows icons for each of the other playable characters. Perhaps you could have swapped between them like the Doppels from Treforce Heroes or perhaps just on the fly. It's unknown and only one report of this being the case is documented. Alternative footage from either the same demo or another build shows the brick blocks having a texture much more similar to that of the original 64 game. Shortly before its release, in a clip from a UK magazine released in a DVD with many game previews, including one for Super Mario 64 DS, showing a slightly different Bomb Squad minigame as well as a black Wario brick blocking the pyramid and shifting sand land. Then on the 21st of November 2004, the game was released. Unfortunately, even to this day, information on the pre-release content is lacking. But that doesn't mean there isn't more to talk about. See, this game, like many, has unused content as well as some oddities left in the game. First off, some oddities of the final product. Starting with the manual, the infamous purple rabbit can be seen on page 32. Could this be a hint towards Waluigi? Probably not. To me, it just seems like a glitch or a printing error due to the white bits of the rabbit being black. However, I can't explain the purple. On page 23, a screenshot showing gameplay appears to have a few issues with it. Number one is the fact that despite having 150 stars, the bottom screen shows yellow stars as opposed to the blue ones. Those same stars also appear to be in locations not only impossible in the final game. The cutting room floor suggests that the silver star icons are different, but to be honest, I don't really see it. Looking deeper, perhaps the yellow stars are supposed to be the icons in question, but here they are side by side if you'd like to be the judge. Pages 33 through 17 show renders for the original Super Mario 64 to explain Mario's basic moves. What's weird is that the next few pages show their at-the-time modern renders, as well as these little stat breakdowns, which as far as I know don't really affect anything outside of each character's special attributes and abilities. Weirder still is that the renders for the game's items like coins, shells, and stars also use dated renders from the N64 era. Nintendo was just being resourceful, I guess, but renders for these things had to have existed by then, right? And of course, the thing I started the video with, in that same E3 demo from 2004, the black box appeared exactly where it is in the file select render. The box was also described as a canon by some sort of unconfirmed source. I guess until we have a playable version of the demo, it's all just speculation. The many missing objects like the sand and some trees lead me to believe that this is a render from an earlier build. Possibly the demo, but it's also possible that it's from the build where the gang was filmed flying. Interestingly, the final game still has a collision where the box used to be. Next, let's look at some stuff left in the game files but left unused. Princess Peach has some basic jumping, walking, and running animations, either as a placeholder or a different ending scene. Maybe she's even going to be playable. These file names aren't named the same as her cutscene names, but who knows. While not technically unused, Wario has an ability where you can Bowser throw another character in versus mode. There's even a render of this move in action. Perhaps this is just a leftover from the more multiplayer-focused days of development. There aren't many unused areas in the files, just a few test levels, none of them being anything notable aside from the geometry of the secret slide room without the character doors and the entrance to the rec room. The same is seen in the N64 version. There's no texturing as seen in this image, however, someone has been able to restore it. There are a few unused objects within the game, as seen previously in a test room. These blocks with the gang's insignia on them, known as cap blocks, and they produce the character's cap when opened. There is also a red Koopa left in the files. It acts the same as a regular green Koopa, if not a little more aggressive. Once out of their shell, however, their shells act quite differently from that of a green Koopa. They cannot be ridden or picked up. They can only be punched, where they will continue until they hit a wall or another solid object, and then they will disappear. Apparently, if Yoshi eats a red shell, he will spit fire like in Super Mario World, but I couldn't find any footage of that. Unused graphics, unlike areas and models, are all over the files of this game. For example, there's this unused file select screen with Bowser's head on it, which could have been used for Bowser levels, or maybe each level would have had their own select screens. In this case, my theory is that this would have been used for Dire Dire Dogs, as it's the only place I can think that has a similar symbol to this Bowser profile. Plus, Navy makes me think of both Murky Waters, and of course, the Navy, because the submarine. Super Mario 64 DS originally seemed to have had the same low poly system as the N64 version as seen by this Goomba left in the files, which we can see in action in this E3 footage. The lower draw distance of the DS might have rendered it useless, leaving this poor Karibo alone deep within the files, never to be seen again. Rabbits might have been planned to be cyan in color as seen by this unused color palette, which can be applied to the rabbit model. Given how the formula for coloring rabbits works in the game, perhaps the cyan rabbits could have been used for something special, same as the silver rabbits. An unused, low-quality, unfinished-looking painting for the battle fort appears in the game's files. However, because the only way to access the level is through a hole in the courtyard, this must have been deemed unneeded. It could have also been used for the stage select in the multiplayer mode, instead of the overhead view which is used in the final game. The image graphic reminds me of Blockfoot from Mario Kart 64 in a way. A placeholder for the power flower can be seen in the game's files, which is just straight up the letter P inside of a red circle. A star with a 5 on it also appears unused in the game, which indicates that some sort of door would have required 5 stars to enter earlier in development. However, this could also be a leftover from the original game, as I believe the game was also intended to have 5-star doors. Please don't quote me on that. The Wanted minigame has some unused sprites from what looked to be the Super Mario Advance games. This could also mean that the icons used on the minimap could have been these two, but given the beta footage already shown, I'm doubtful. Coincentration also has some Super Mario Advance graphics unused along with this Wario sprite, which could have been an in-between frame before he falls during the minigame failure. Finally, let's look at some regional differences. Spoiler alert, you Americans kinda got snubbed compared to the other regions. Starting with the box art, Asian regions had a way better image in my opinion. They have this weird yellow pipe which doesn't appear in the final game, and honestly the whole thing seems to be based more on Super Mario 64 by 4, as the characters appear to be fighting, given, Yoshi eating dirt and Luigi looking horrified. The Western box art also seems to be based on 64 by 4, but to a lesser extent. More so looking to show off the more important things within the game. Actually, can I just stop for a moment and say how liminal these and the original US box art look? I mean, in games like Breath of the Wild and New Super Mario Bros., where the box arts are based on gameplay, they're at least recreatable. Super Mario 64's cartridge has a nondescript field with Bowser chasing Mario, and let's not even talk about the supposed beta artwork. That said, the box art for both the US and Japanese artworks are fine. They're exactly what they need to be, but the two versions of the DS version just feel like remnants of a bygone era in the game's development. Now getting into the game, you may have already noticed that the different logos, which again, in Asian cultures are way cooler. The DS, especially on these logos, is so thick and beautiful, unlike the malnourished one we got in the West. The 64 in the US version uses the 64 from the original game, with that gold and red 64. The Asian box art, however, uses a more whimsical red and black 64 on their logo, and a super cool multicolored instead of just blue. By far, the Korean version of the game is the most different. Because of their strict gambling laws, the Rec Room was removed entirely from their version of the game, and thus, all rabbits. Save for the silver ones, they were all removed from the game. But you might wonder what the point of going to the castle's roof is if there's no rabbit to unlock the slots minigame. Well, they replaced it with a box that gives you 100 lives, making this 100% reward way more similar to the originals. Well, that's it for me. I'm sorry if my research wasn't concise or really that good. I just wanted to share something that has my interest for many years, and I didn't really see it covered much on YouTube. My sources are in the description if you'd like to do your own research and prove me wrong in some way. Anyway, huge thank you to the Cutting Room Floor for all their contributions. If you enjoyed, please feel free to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching my video. Also, it's my birthday, so that'd be pretty cool too.